In dieser Episode von Meikes Raumzeit spreche ich mit Martin Gill, VP und Research Director bei Forrester, über die großen Fragen, die derzeit viele CX, Marketing und Digitalverantwortliche beschäftigen und über den CX Summit EMEA 2026, der vom 8. bis 10. Juni in Amsterdam unter dem Motto Build the Experience AI Can't stattfindet. Wir sprechen darüber, was dieses Motto ganz praktisch bedeutet, warum Vertrauen in Zeiten von KI zu einem zentralen Währung wird, wie CX-Teams in einer volatilen Welt resilienter werden können und weshalb Unternehmen künftig nicht nur für Menschen, sondern auch für Maschinen lesbar sein müssen. Da Martin Englisch spricht, werde ich auch die Sprache wechseln und diese Episode auf Englisch führen. Hello Martin, I'm happy that you're here.
Hello.
To start, could you briefly introduce yourself, firstly, for all of those that don't know you yet? So who are you? What is it that you do?
My name's Martin Gill, so I'm research director for our consumer business. Well, it's complicated, but broadly, customer experience, digital business, marketing around the world. We have a complex structure, but let's say for the purposes of this, I'm responsible for our CX Summit in EMEA, which is one of the things we're going to talk about.
Yeah. So I mentioned in the intro, we're going to talk about the CX Summit. So the CX Summit EMEA brings together customer experience, marketing, digital leaders, thinkers, and technology leaders. From your perspective as a host, what is the central topic or tension that makes this year's event particularly relevant?
I mean, you're not going to be surprised if I say AI, and we've been talking about AI for a while, but we're trying to. I'm sure we'll get deeper into this, but we're trying to move beyond the idea of AI. Oh, it's here, it's amazing, and we're trying to move into a world where we're using AI as a transformational technology, not as an efficiency play, not as a way to write emails faster or write some better marketing copy, as a genuine new technology that can do new things.
Okay. You have the motto. It says that the topic is build the experience AI can't.
Yeah.
What does that mean in practical terms, actually?
Well, it means that even though I've just said use AI to transform, people are the root of your business. Humans create emotional connection. Humans build trust in brands. We are all human at the end of the day. And AI can do some wonderful things. And it can accelerate experiences. It can build new experiences we haven't been able to get to before. But we want to make sure everybody roots this in empathy, in emotion, in trust, in responsible AI, and in things that customers want. Because we're going to talk about like some of the risks, but one of the big things we're seeing is this rush, and we've seen it. Anyone who's been in tech for, like I've been doing this for 20 plus years, is the rush to go new technology, throw technology at problems without going back to the roots of why are we doing this in the first place? Do customers want it? What problems are we solving? And how does it make things better? Rather than there's something shiny, let's chase the shiny thing.
Yeah. Is that what you're seeing actually in the market, that companies are more likely just kind of following a hype and kind of doing it, or are they actually taking that step back and think about where's our foundation, our root, and are we doing if we good?
Yeah, good question. We're seeing both, and I think we're going to put a couple of brands on stage that we think showcase the way we think it should be done. So if I give a couple of examples, one of our key brands is going to be Tony's Chocolonely. So everyone loves chocolate, but they're doing some really cool things about how they're building AI, what we call AIQ, internally in their organization, and how they're putting AI in front of customers, but to solve problems. I mean, problems related to chocolate, right? So it's not, but they solve actual problems that customers face and how they interact with the brand.
Okay.
We're going to finish the event with Siddhartha Chatterjee, who's Global Chief Data and AI Officer, that's a mouthful, at Club Med. And one of the reasons we're finishing there is because we're going to put all sorts of different building blocks of how you do this on stage. And then we want to bring it back at the end to Club Med because we believe they've done it all. They've genuinely been through this big transformation starting in like 2021, 2022. They started with an enterprise data fabric, with governance, with building out AI internally. And when generative AI came along, they were able to massively accelerate how they used it because they'd built the governance, the foundation, etc. And governance, data foundation sounds super boring, but what we're seeing in the leading organizations is those are the things that accelerate change.
Yeah.
Those are the things that accelerate time to value.
Yeah. You're saying all the time it's a transformation. Can you narrow it down for us and then the listeners? What is actually that transformation that you mean?
If I wind us back to like previously at Forrester, I used to work in mobile and digital transformation and a lot of emerging technology areas, how they're applied to business. When mobile came around, when social media came around, we saw the advent of digital transformation. And a lot of firms made that mean, let's throw technology at existing problems and try to make them faster, try to digitize existing processes, digitize existing experiences. There were some flagship brands out there, and I'm going to use a very overused example, but it does tell the story. Look at Uber as a great example. Uber exists because of smartphones. You would never have thought of a business model that is, I'm going to give a GPS tracker to all the drivers and all our potential customers, and I've got to give them this physical device so that they can track each other's location in real time and ride share and build a taxi service. You'd never have gone out and given all those GPS trackers to people.
Yeah.
But now everyone's carrying them in your smartphone. Suddenly a new business model can emerge. Yeah. It's an old problem, but it's a completely new way of solving a problem that only exists because of the technology. Yeah. So that's where I'm getting to with transformation. Is a lot of what we're seeing with AI is solving old problems with new technology. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what we're not seeing is the innovation frontier of it can do new things that we could never do before. So how do we create that in a way that solves customer problems in new ways, solves business problems in new ways, and only exists now because the technology's unlocked something?
So where are you then seeing maybe the biggest opportunities for customer experience or customizity, and maybe as well for innovation, what you just mentioned right now, and maybe as well the biggest risk if we go on both sides?
So I think the opportunities are there, but I think we're at the frontier of them coming.
Oh.
And I think this is what we're seeing from some of our clients, some of the research, is that we talk about, it's very easy to get seduced into this world of agentic, like agentic commerce and like everything's gonna be agentic. A lot of that technology is now there and is coming, and it's possible to do a lot of things now, but the risks are rushing too quickly into it, throwing technology at the problem, thinking it will answer everything, and not rooting what you do in solving customer problems or building customer trust in your experiences. And like trust's very much at the core of what we're going to talk about throughout the entire conference.
Yeah. One of the keynote topics is distrust in the age of AI as well. How does AI rise actually, or changing the trust equation between brands and customers?
Yeah, I think that this is, I wanted to get there because I think this is super important. And our conference a couple of years ago was about human plus AI, and we've been banging this trust drum for quite a long time. So for instance, a couple of years ago, and this stat hasn't changed much, about 80 to 85% of UK consumers tell us they always want to know when AI is deployed in an experience. So and a similar number across Europe and globally tell us that they believe firms should deploy AI responsibly. So there's very much a move towards consumers think that firms should be, whether you want to use the word ethical or not, but release responsible, build lack of bias, build trust, transparency, etc. into AI. This is something consumers want. So 80+%. At the same time, the same data set that I have from the UK from a year and a half ago tells us that less than 50% of UK consumers believe that AI is deployed in self-driving cars. So let that one sink in for a minute.
Okay.
Almost all UK consumers want to know when AI is deployed.
Yeah.
Less than half of them actually understand that AI powers a self-driving car. There is a huge perception and knowledge gap between what consumers think they want and what they actually know about how the technology works. And that's a huge challenge for a brand. So imagine you deploy AI and customers don't even realize it's being deployed, yet they fundamentally want you to tell them.
Yeah.
So you see examples of like these chatbots faking, pretending to be human. There's been all sorts of examples recently. We've had recent UK local elections. There was a candidate elected and we were unsure. It turns out he was a human, but there was a whole load of press for a short while going, is it an AI candidate? Is it a human candidate? We weren't sure. There are examples like if you go and look at some of the influencers, like Lil Michaela is a good example, completely fake
Yeah.
humans that aren't there, just machine generated,
Yeah.
that people genuinely believe are real. There was a case in the US quite recently about like a military influencer. The ability to fake genuine people, or not genuine people, the ability to make genuine looking people,
Yeah.
it's out there now. And if you go back to my stats, 80+% of consumers want to know, less than 50% even realize AI powers the cars. We're heading for this potential consumer backlash
Yeah.
if we're not careful about how we do this.
Yeah. So do brands, or is a company now kind of actually more having to do the communication or building the trust for the consumers? Or do they need to take the, let's say, the responsibility actually then?
Well, yeah, we fundamentally believe they do. And I think responsible AI is an incredibly important part of what we're going to talk about on stage. So that breaks down into making sure you, like I said before, making sure you don't have bias in your models, making sure that it's transparent, that you can show how decisions are made. And it varies by use case, right? So even if, so here in Europe, well, I mean, I'm no longer in Europe, unfortunately. No, it's the EU, I'm still in Europe.
Yeah.
European EU companies are bound by the emerging legislation. So you have to think about different risk levels, etc., which has different levels of governance around them from a legislative point of view. But even outside of that framework, what we're hearing from consumers is they want firms to take responsibility for how they deploy AI.
Yeah.
So I think you can't stand behind legislation and say, oh, well, it's all taken care of. You've got to step up and demonstrate to consumers, how are you making decisions? How is AI? Is it biased or not? Can you show it from a transparency point of view?
Yeah.
So you need this responsible AI and AI governance approach.
Yeah.
Another one of the brands we're going to put on stage is Zurich. So Connie Culture from Zurich Insurance is Chief Customer Officer, and she's got a great example of how Zurich used, not to spoil her thunder, she's going to present on this, but there's a great example about how Zurich use AI to assess auto claims. And obviously, it's a thing you can do. You can take photographs of the crash. You can load them up into a Gen AI model. It can assess whether you're at fault or not. What Zurich do is make sure they use AI to accelerate paying out the claim. So if the AI detects, actually, this looks like a legitimate claim, consumer should be paid, let's accelerate payment to the consumer rather than getting a human involved. So consumer benefit, faster payment.
Yeah.
If the AI detects any mismatch, any anomaly, any concern about whether the claim isn't legitimate, it doesn't say no. It never says no to the consumer. It passes it to a human loss adjuster to go and assess further. So they're building empathy and transparency and trust into the model by making sure it never disappoints the customer. All it's ever doing is delighting them because it pays them faster, or referring them to a human agent to go talk to them.
Yeah.
So there's little things like that. I mean, when you explain it like that, it sounds obvious, but many brands aren't doing it. Many brands are rushing to say, how do we get AI to assess insurance claims? And then getting it wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. So at the end of the day, it brings us back to what you said at the beginning. You need to have a proper and the solid foundation. You need to have your governance right. You need to have your case right. You need to know where you're going. What is your empathy? Where is the responsibility? When is the human stepping in or having the responsibility, deciding whether yes or no at the end? So actually, before deploying AI, you should really first get the foundation right.
Yeah, and yes, and I think that there is an element of you can't afford to wait. So what we don't want to encourage is brands to spend another 3 years building out all their data fabric and changing process and whatever. You've got to balance this kind of two-speed thing that we used to hear about with you've got to experiment, but you've got to experiment in a way that gets your employees up to speed, learning, more comfortable with the technology, not fearing that they're going to be made redundant. It's not a human replacement thing. You've got to lodge that with people, and you've got to experiment with where it can make a difference for your brand, while at the same time understanding that to do what I talked about earlier on with Uber, to build a genuine transformation play, that's an enterprise-wide challenge. That's not something you're going to do in 6 months.
Yeah. Well, it's a change process that we're in, actually, and you need to take the employees on board and to kind of be, accept them.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why the other keynote that we're doing is around employee experience.
Yeah.
So we've been running customer experience and brand experience measures for quite a while now.
Yeah.
And we're introducing an employee experience lens into our total experience index. So we launched our total experience last year. It's a compound of customer experience index that we've run for like 15, 20 years,
Yeah.
brand experience that we've run for about a decade. We
Yeah.
brought these two indices together. And a lot of people asked, hey, why haven't you got employees in there? Sure, employees are part of the experience. And it's a very valid question, right?
It
But
is.
what again, back to the delay thing, what we didn't want to do is delay another year while we worked out how to measure employee experience. What we wanted to do is get the customer visible stuff out there and knowing that we could bring in employee experience.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that we're bringing to the table in the next couple of
Yeah.
weeks.
Yeah.
And that will start to show. And we plot these brands on a growth grid. So we look at kind of how you're creating a great brand and how you're delivering on that brand, and what's the gap between brand promise, brand perception, and the actual experience customers get when they shop with you.
Yeah.
So you often see a mismatch, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And then what we're overlaying on top of that is employee experience.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is kind of breaking the myth, because it's always been sort of standard knowledge that to create a great customer experience, you need a great employee experience. And what we're actually finding from the data is that's not true.
Oh.
You can create a great customer experience and have quite a poor employee experience. But what that means is you're on a path to burnout for your employees.
Yeah.
Because your employees are having to work so much harder, you're putting barriers in their way, and they're really pushing themselves to deliver on that great customer experience. It is better if you have parity, but we do see examples of brands where you have significant mismatch.
Interesting. Yeah. How do you evaluate then the employee experience? You said it's new, so what is it based on then at the end?
So a very, very large data set of like hundreds of thousands of employees
Yes.
globally, and that's been the challenge to get that. And there's a lot of proprietary stuff going on behind the scenes, because what we have to make sure is when we're asking, are you an employee of Lufthansa, we need to make sure that you genuinely are an employee of Lufthansa.
Yeah.
And we've worked with a number of partners to get a data set that we trust and is robust, and then we can map from a methodology point of view to brand and customer experience.
Yeah.
That's why it's taken so long, because it's easier for us to go to consumers and survey, what do you think about a brand? Because consumer, have you shopped at Lufthansa? Have you flown with Lufthansa? Yes or no? Whereas, there was some complications in getting that data set to the point where we were willing to trust it. So we're there now.
Yeah. Are there any other surprises except for the mismatch of the employee experience, the low employee experience, and being still able to deliver a high customer experience?
I mean, that's the big one that came out of
Yeah.
this. I think there's more underneath that. So the thing with all of these measures is, the index itself is like, whatever, it's a number.
Yeah.
And some companies get super obsessed with the number, and we try to discourage that. And it's very easy to look at it and go, oh, Forrester published another number. Actually, what sits behind all of this is, on the brand side, there's a driver model of fit, salience, and trust in the brand. On the customer experience side, there's a driver model of ease, effectiveness, and emotion. They correlate to loyalty metrics. So in all cases, we can show if you improve the inputs, you improve advocacy, you improve retention, you improve enrichment, you improve customer acquisition. So this is a model that attaches to like business outcome metrics, and we're overlaying the employee experience ones into that. And then underneath that, there's a complex driver model of 30 to 40 drivers per industry. So like in banking, it's things like agent answers all my questions first time, or fees are transparent, or transactions process quickly. So it gets down to much more actionable things that you can make a difference on.
Yeah.
So at the surface of it, we present a number because the number is an easy thing for people to consume, and it's easy to plot you on a grid of like great customer experience, bad brand. But actually the richness for our clients in the model sits beneath that and gets down to an actionable. You're struggling with your brand because the fit isn't right for customers because blah, 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 blah. And you can ladder it down to something where a CX team can look at it and go, right, there's a problem we need to fix. So we can act on this.
In the employee experience, is there the topic of resilience as well? Is it one? Because you wrote recently the resilience in a volatile world. What does resilience actually mean? And why was that important? And was it maybe part of the employee experience now as well?
Tangentially, yes. So what does resilience mean? It means, obviously, we live in a very volatile world. I don't need to tell any of your listeners how volatile we've been literally just in this year for the first few months of 2026. And it's not slowing down. So firms need resilience in supply chain, in product design, in all sorts of different things, but we need resilience in our people. And resilience comes through having the right culture. And that's where the people link comes in. So we've very much seen there's an adjacent piece of research we've been doing for a while, which we call culture energy. So it looks at the kind of culture energy of your organization, largely from a customer centricity point of view, but it brings in things like adaptability, creativity, etc. In the culture you're trying to build in your organization. And where resilience comes in, we've found, looking at examples of firms that have been resilient and have adapted to change, is that when you have a culture with a high degree of autonomy, of not command and control, but governance around, I understand what my authority is, what my decision-making capabilities are, I understand the processes and how to approach things, those companies tend to be more resilient because they're less brittle, they're more adaptable.
Yeah.
So I think there is a connection there. We haven't drawn it exactly in the employee experience research, but the culture energy research really does point to that.
Yeah. Yeah. You wrote another piece that I would like to bring up, and that was the idea of the new battleground. It's not UX anymore, but being machine readable. What does that mean actually precisely for companies and for designing experiences?
Well, this goes back to a question you asked earlier on about like what's the frontier of transformation, because we see agentic coming and we see customers begin. So obviously I can paint a picture of a world in the future where I have an agent that will, book me a trip to Paris and I can give it authority to spend some money and give it my preferred brands, and it can see my diary so it knows when I'm available, and it will make decisions autonomously on my behalf. We're not there yet. The tech exists, but the trust doesn't really exist yet, and the whole back-end infrastructure isn't quite there yet.
Yeah.
But we're seeing, so we can see a world where, and this is an emerging world which is happening right now, where as a brand you have to serve both a machine customer and a human customer. The machine customer because some customers have trusted agents to do tasks for them, and the human customer because some people still want to talk to you or interact with your website. You can see any B2B brand will tell you this right now, that website traffic has dropped ridiculously. LLMs are beginning to replace search and discovery for B2B. They're starting to get there for B2C as well.
Yeah.
The dynamics changing about where you need to show up as a brand to have consideration in the customer lifecycle. And we're seeing that faster in B2B. We're seeing it happening in B2C space. So I'll give you a couple of other stats. Data from earlier on in this year. I'm going to do UK again because I've got the data to hand. This kind of works across Europe though, and this is similar in the US. So we're not seeing a massive distinction. There's a marginal regional variance on this, but broadly this is kind of directional. Yeah. So about 1 in 3 consumers. This is the start of the year, so this may have changed by now. Because bear in mind, this moves fast. So in February, about 1 in 3 consumers in the UK had used an AI assistant for some kind of banking task. So that's quite a lot already.
Wow.
3.
Yeah.
Out of those, 52% found a bank's chatbot helpful.
Okay.
So they've gone to a bank and they've talked to the bank's chatbot, and their response when we asked them was it useful or not is yes, it's helpful. 52%. 73% found third-party chatbots helpful. So 1 in 3 customers in the UK are potentially going to Gemini or Claude or pick your favorite, asking complex questions, and we've got a breakdown of the questions they ask, and it's not just is my local branch open, it's like financial advice type level of questions, asking complex questions of Claude or of ChatGPT, and 3/4 of them are finding it useful. The banks got out of the loop in that equation. The bank's disintermediated, and the customer's only going to go to the bank when it needs a transaction. They're beginning to get their advice from chatbots, unregulated, ungoverned, you argue uncontrolled advice going to customers. This becomes a bit of a Wild West world for banks. But what it does mean is we're very, in the banking space, we already have open banking, the ability for data requests, transaction requests, etc., to be for those bots to actually ask the banks for more detailed information. That's there. In the retail world, we're already starting to see agentic commerce infrastructures and frameworks begin to emerge. All of the basic infrastructure is beginning to fall into place for a genuinely different world to exist. And go back to our early conversation, trust is still the barrier. But what we're starting to see in the UK, based on my data, is when these third-party chatbots perform, customers are willing to trust them.
Aha.
So you can come at this from two different dimensions. One is it's going to go horrifically wrong. There's going to be a backlash, but the other is consumers are leaning into it, and they're leaning into it way faster than we thought they would.
Yeah.
And we're a research firm. We've been watching this, but we're seeing this shift towards customers trusting these and using this technology, not just the bank's technology, but third-party LLMs, super fast.
Yeah.
So as those bots start to become the primary way consumers interact with brands, I'm waving my hands around, you can't see me in the thing, but imagine a layer cake with the consumer at the top, Claude, etc. in the middle, and then your brand at the bottom. Suddenly you're not having a direct relationship with the consumer anymore.
Absolutely.
That's a huge challenge. So that's why we say you've got to start making sure you're surfaced in those chatbots.
Yeah.
And that comes through making everything machine readable, product information, reviews, all that kind of thing. And making sure that your data is getting surfaced, or building a reason why customers need to come to you and talk to you in the first place with a private model that adds more value than they can get from a public model.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's really interesting what you said, that actually with a good experience that the trust is kind of actually increasing, and then they're winning it with it. So there is a lot of discussions about the question of whether it's a customer experience is losing its influence inside of an organization, or when I'm listening to you now, actually it's just maybe changing what does that experience mean, or you need to provide a perfect experience in order to win the trust of your customers back, or keep it, as ever you want to. What is your take on that, and what are you seeing maybe across EMEA?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to trust again, because actually we've got another data point. I might get it slightly wrong, but this is directionally correct. That I think it's about, from an internal point of view, an internal stakeholder executive survey for CX teams, only about 33% of senior stakeholders and organizations trust the data that CX teams give them. So that's a problem if you let that one sink in. You're providing all of these insights, but only about a third of the people looking at them actually are willing to trust those insights. That's the trust barrier internally that CX teams have got to work.
Okay.
And we see this coming from, I think there's three different factors at play here. One is CX teams have typically been backwards looking. And I'm part of this world, so I'm not throwing rocks at everybody, right? But we've built an industry, or build a profession that has championed looking at what customers did. What did they do last month? What did they do last year? What did they think about us last time they transacted with us? And that's been valuable, but we're looking in the rearview mirror. And MPS and the whole infrastructure around measurements built around telling us what happened. Yeah. The frontier is working out what's going to happen next. So predictive technology that looks ahead to predict churn, to predict spend, to predict what's going to happen, to predict where a journey is going to break. Right. That's hard, but that's the kind of frontier what I see these teams going. So dimension one, stop looking in the rearview mirror, start looking forward and telling your stakeholders what's about to happen and how do you get out in front of this. Dimension two is around outcomes. So it links to the first one. I think so many CX teams are focused on what we call admiring our problems. It's like, that thing over there is broken. We can prove it. Customers tell us it's broken. And then, but no one's doing anything about it. Rather than being on the frontier of, this thing is broken, here's how we need to fix it. Here's the action we need to take. Here's the impact it will have if we change it. Here's the measurable financial impact of changing that journey step because customers drop out of the experience, they abandon their cart, whatever it is. So getting away again from here's articulating the problem to articulating the solution, or being part of driving the solution. And I think those two things link together, the predictive to responsive. And then the third is linked to that. It's speaking the executive language. So again, getting out of sentiment, getting out of problems and into risk, value, profit, P&L, impact, back to resilience again, is focusing the impact of the CX team on the business impact of what you do. And this is, go on LinkedIn, every CX voice out there is talking about this, but we're talking about it for a reason, because when we then go and talk to clients on a practitioner point of view, they're often still like, well, I hear you, but my dashboard, but my survey, and we've got to get over that, because otherwise we're always going to be doing those three things, like talking about problems, looking in the rearview mirror, and floating at a level below the executive team, not having influence.
But it's interesting that you're talking about the outcome. It's kind of as well, or the value, actually making it for business value. Because if you talk about AI, you hear a lot as well, mainly the questions for the value and the outcome. Well, at the end of the day, you're facing the same difficulties or challenges. So my question is actually going, what is then for you? What do you say to CX leaders and managers that kind of, how do they overstep this kind of being stuck in documentation analysis or workshops and with the rear view when the mirror, kind of, how do they get actually into action and executing?
Yeah, I think we've been over the years, we've really changed our advice and we've changed how we talk about how teams need to approach things. So I'd wind this back to previously, before I came to Forrester, I worked at Boots in the UK and I ran the enterprise architecture team there. And I was in a world, and I made this mistake, 100% hold my hand up. I made this mistake of kind of believing, okay, the enterprise architecture team's job is to document all the things, work out all the systems, build all these pre-diagrams, work out how everything fits together. And we did all of that, and no one cared because they were all too busy. Yes, but that was the realization, because they were too busy worrying about, we've got to move from this warehouse to that warehouse, or we've got to increase conversion on the website. And we understood all the systems that's behind that, but the business stakeholders didn't care about that. They didn't care we could show up to a meeting with a big pretty diagram. And I equate that to where we see customer experience teams like measuring all the customer sentiment across all the channels, or mapping all of them. Journey mapping is a great example. We mapped all the journeys. We built a journey atlas. What are you changing? Don't know. We've mapped all the journeys. Like, that doesn't help anybody. But where it does help is if you can show up to a meeting where there's a genuine problem, like take website conversion is a good example. Conversions dropping. Right, we've got a tool that can help. It's called journey mapping. Let's do it now. Bang. We've mapped the steps. Here's the problem. And that problem has a business value, a dollar value or euro value, whatever, associated with it, because we're losing $1 million a year of revenue, and journey mapping fixes that problem. Bang, done. That's a totally different conversation from, we're just going to like canonically create this diagram of how the business operates that will then go on a wall and no one ever looks at. So I go back to what you asked is like, solve a problem. Find someone with a problem that the CFO can go, if you fix that problem, you're my hero, because it's money. It's like cost or revenue. And then use the techniques that we know. The techniques aren't wrong. We're not here to tell you journey mapping, journey management, measurement, etc. wrong. It's just that the technique for the sake of the technique, or the tool for the sake of the technique, doesn't solve a problem. Go solve problems.
So it's a bit changing your perspective as well. Kind of, don't just find them some problems. Don't just find problems, solve them.
Because no one wants to be told, oh, you're doing it.
If we go back to the CX Summit next month, I had a look at the event agenda, including very many sessions about total experience, employee experience. We were talking about complaint handling. We're talking about, obviously, AI-powered enterprises. What is for you as a host? Where do you expect, which conversation do you expect to be the most urgent for leaders now? Because they won't be able to attend probably all of them.
Well, we're trying to make sure that there's a balance between some inspirational content on the main stage with like new Forrester research, and also some great brands that I've mentioned, and then very actionable content in the tracks. So there's a lot of workshops. One of the things we've been responding to with this event for a number of years is the feedback we get about making it more actionable. And we've really been leaning in year on year on year to make the content more and more and more actionable. So one of the things I really want to I think resonates, and I want to make sure people hear, is that this isn't a conference where you're going to turn up and sit in a dark room for 2 days and listen to us talk. There'll be a little bit of that, but really what this is about is inspiring you to think about how to change, but then giving you the tools, hands-on tools, to drive that change in the business through workshops, through roundtables, through interactive sessions. And the thing that I think is going to be, well, I know because it's booked out already, will be most in demand is what we're calling our interactive experience. Or immersive experience. We have different names for it. So over the course of the last couple of years, we've been inspired by things like escape rooms or like physical interactive experiences. And we built one last year, and we've refined it this year. And I'll shout out to my colleague, Joanna de Cantonier, who's really led on this. We've been out talking to escape room designers, game designers, all sorts of different things to get some different inspiration. And we've built an experience. I'm not going to spoiler it. We'll put it out and we'll show some photos on LinkedIn and stuff. But if I look at like last year's one, it was really around how we're trying to demonstrate how personas, journey maps, journey atlas, and prioritization all flow and link together. And we created an experience where it was, I call it the Disney ride, essentially a room where, if you think about how a workshop works normally, you get 30 people, put them in a room for 3 hours, and you run through some exercises. This flips the model on its head and takes about 6 or 7 people and pushes them through a process for 40 to 50 minutes and then spits them out the other side. And it's a linear process from like you do station 1, station 2, station 3, station 4, and you learn something different along the way, and then you come out the other side. So it's kind of a workshop, but it's a different format workshop, and it's much more dynamic and fast paced.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And the groups are smaller.
Yeah.
And then this year we're gonna put in a bit of gamification. We're gonna split the teams into 2, make them compete with each other. We're not gonna lock them in the room, they can't leave. But it's kind of bringing some like fun, interactive elements. We use a lot of props. We use a lot of like techniques that we've seen from escape rooms to like change your mindset, make you think about problems in different ways. And we know that's gonna sell out a lot. So
Yeah, sounds great. Oh yeah, definitely. And what is it from your perspective as a host? What are you looking the most to?
Well, 2 things. We're moving to Amsterdam. We've been in London for the last few years. We moved to Amsterdam. Amazing location. We're right in the city centre. It's a fantastic building. So we're in Beurs van... I'm going to mispronounce it in Dutch. I apologise. The Beurs van Bellage, which is the old stock exchange. And it's a fantastically historical building. There's really cool stories around it. And interestingly, we talked about trust a lot. The building itself is a real icon of trust for me because in the old Victorian days, everything was based on trust. There was no computers, there was no telecoms, all those contracts for like grain or tobacco, whatever they were selling. It's all about trust. So we're going to use that as a bit of a theme for how we talk about the topics. So the location's so super cool. But for me, I mean, I get a lot of buzz out of these events because it's like seeing people in person. Especially post-COVID, we're all very virtual. A lot of our work, I mean, we're recording a podcast from like 2 different countries. We've all got used to doing this. And I get personally so much energy from just being there in person and like talking to people, seeing people, being physically present.
Absolutely. The same, and I'm looking forward to meeting you personally.
Yeah, you're going to come as well. So you will hopefully take you to some workshops, get you on the interactive experience. You'll get to see the amazing building.
yes.
So, all good.
Yes. Thank you, Martin. With that, I will conclude the podcast. Really enjoyed our conversation about
You're welcome.
great experience in time when really technology is becoming more powerful, but the human side and the trust in the experience is therefore more important than ever.
100%.
Thank you very much, Martin.
Thanks.